Warning: this podcast may include vulgar language, innuendo, and potentially offensive commentary. Listener discretion is advised. Warning: this podcast may include vulgar language, innuendo, and potentially offensive commentary. Listener discretion is advised. Welcome back to the second From the Point podcast. I am one of your hosts, Sam.
I'm the other one.
And today, actually, an update from this morning. Jordan Martinook was signed today, which is good news because he's a really versatile player, and he can play any side, left wing, right wing, center. But John Chaika doesn't seem to think that he is right wing material, which is unfortunate because that's what the Coyotes are in need for.
Well, no, he was signed as a Swiss Army knife because he plays everywhere except defense and goalie. So he could play left, he could play right, he could play center. Obviously, his natural position is on the left side, but I mean, push comes to shove. I mean, if I'm looking at people who can go to the right side because John Chaika doesn't make a trade, it's Martinook.
Yeah, he's a good utility player for a third and fourth line, to grind out some minutes. A good, quick player who can play along the boards. The Coyotes got him for 2 more years at $1.8 million.
That was for
annual.
the second year.
Well, no, it's for both years.
No, his base salary for this coming season is $175. Next year is $185, but the AAV is $18, which is what the cap hit is. It evens it out, but he gets paid more the second year.
All right.
And that's where the hiccups were coming in because Martinook wanted a certain amount of money, but Chaika's trying to maneuver the cap, and even though it doesn't seem like a lot, ultimately Martinook gets what he wants, and he gets that money in the second year, so that if he produces well this year and it looks like he's actually growing as a player, he's getting paid marginally more in real cash value. That kind of improves his worth when he goes into the open market again in 2 years.
Yeah, and something that a lot of not super highly talented players, they don't want to go to arbitration because they get all these teams telling them what they're worth, and usually that kind of stuff leads to telling them how they're not really good enough to be on NHL teams. And so a lot of players like Martinook, he really wanted to avoid arbitration, and so he and his agent got it all done today, and it seems like he's pretty happy. And they also signed Tyler Gaudette today, I believe, as well.
They re-signed Gaudette, who is a depth center. He's been called up in the past, but he's absolutely useless. $650 for 1 year. It's his cap hit, but ultimately it's going to just get eaten. I think is like $75K in Tucson. There's even if injuries, there are so many guys on the roster now that can flip out to center, and they can call a winger up like Fisher. They can call a winger up like Bunting. Instead of calling up a center, because they traded Dauphin, who was like the real call-up first-line center. Chris Mueller is gone, so that older depth guy, he's gone. He went to Toronto, I believe.
Oh wow, he was a good player in Tucson.
Yeah, so the center depth they need to leave in Tucson because they don't really have any of it. So I think signing Gaudette to leave him in Tucson to let someone eat space is kind of what's important.
All right. So today we have on a very, very, very special guest, Jacoby. He's a resident Blues fan.
Hi there.
And he's on to talk us through a Blues expose. Some interesting information on his team. So let's start out today by talking about the big signing this week, which was the extension of Colton Parayko.
Yep.
Yeah, that's a big body on the blue line.
For a 5-year deal at $27.5 million.
Break down to what, 5 something a year?
Something about that.
Which is
5.5.
That's a pretty good bargain for a guy like Parayko because he's a great player. Probably. Would you say compare him to Pietrangelo? What kind of are they similar skill levels? Are they too different to really compare?
Well, you can say Pietrangelo is definitely a very good defenseman. Parayko is definitely up there. He You know,
24.
yeah, hasn't been around quite as long, but you know, with just a few more years, he could be top defenseman easily.
Right, which is why they got a great deal, 5.5 for 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
Which is they have him locked up for when he enters his prime, when he's like 26, 27, 28. Those are the years that his players typically enter their prime. So they could have him for a couple good years and then even extend him from there. And so, else on the defense.
Hold on. Based on Parayko's trajectory, because it looks like he's trending towards top pair minutes for sure, do you think it would have been smarter to lock him up for longer term and give him a little bit more money just so that you have that defenseman for a very long time who you can lean on? Because I don't know how old Pietrangelo is, but there's going to come a time where he's going to decline in minutes, he's going to decline in production. It's almost like the deal that the Coyotes are going to try to make with Ekman Larsson, where they basically try to sign him for life, and not like a Kovalchuk deal where you sign him for 20 years for umpteen million, but
That was
something like
terrible.
I don't know, 8 years or 7 years, where you kind of try to hold on to him longer, but concede a little bit more money and structure it out more in like signing bonuses.
Mm-hmm.
Would that have been smarter than a 5-year kind of regular deal?
Well, I think 5 years is still a pretty decent amount of time to hold on to him, and definitely by the end of those 5 years, we'll probably see something, maybe an extension. It kind of depends, but Parayko's definitely, by the end of those 5 years, he'll probably be the next Pietrangelo.
Yeah. I think 5 years is good because you don't want to pay him for too long. Because what if he actually doesn't pan out? Because if you
Well, I mean, Parayko's stats for the last two seasons have been. I mean, he scored 2 more points this season, but he also played 2 more games, but that doesn't really mean anything. His shooting percentage went down, but his total number of shots went up, which isn't typically a good thing, but as a defenseman, you only get X amount of shots anyways. So when you shoot him, if you're still producing 35 points and your shooting percentage is that low, I don't think that's a big of a deal. But the trend in terms of like shot suppression and the other advanced stats, I mean, he seems like he's going to be a top 10, maybe even top 5 defenseman in the league.
Well, yeah, you just need to make sure that he doesn't peak too early, and make sure he enters his prime. And when he does, he's that kind of top defenseman who rivals Pietrangelo's skill, and can possibly take over for him on the right side for the top pair.
Mm-hmm.
Right-handed?
I believe so. I know Pietrangelo is.
No, he is. I don't know about Pietrangelo.
Because I know Jay Bouwmeester's getting up there in years. I don't know how much longer he can play at the level he is, because he's on the right side with Pietrangelo on the top pair, right?
Parayko's metrics, I mean, it got a little bit worse this year, but to be fair, if you compare the 15-16 Blues to the 16-17 Blues, they took a step back almost. So it's
definitely
not surprising that
they had a pretty rough start to the year.
Yeah, the season was actually kind of bad.
Yeah,
it's a miracle they even made it to the playoffs.
Actually, let's
they
segue
limped into the playoffs,
into
right?
Jake Allen, because that was actually a big reason why they weren't as good in the first half, and then he came back after the All-Star break, recharged and ready to go, and he led them to a great second half and a great playoff showing as well. I thought he was actually one of the better goalies in the playoffs, and definitely gave Pekka a run for the money in that second round.
Oh, of course. Jake Allen was definitely struggling a lot by mid-season. Well, the whole team was struggling a lot by mid-season.
And they fired Hitchcock.
Yeah, that led to a major coaching change, led to a trade for Shattenkirk.
Yep.
Well, Shattenkirk wasn't necessarily the problem. It was a realization that he wasn't going to re-sign.
They actually had a lot of right-handed defensemen.
Yeah, they did. But it was a realization that he was going to flee, and you might as well fleece a team for another team that he's going to flee.
Like Washington.
Right.
Yeah.
Washington gave up a really good guy, and I think his name was Sanford or something.
Zach Sanford.
He actually played well.
Yeah, he actually did pretty well for the rest of the season.
And in the playoffs, he had a couple goals.
I think the Shattenkirk move was separate from the trials and tribulations that the Blues encountered this season.
Yeah, I loved that trade. I was a little mad that he went to a division rival of the Penguins, but it all turned out pretty well in the end because the Capitals really didn't need another guy to quarterback their power play.
Well, even then, Shattenkirk didn't do much.
Oh yeah, he was terrible. He was hilarious.
Yeah,
because they give up one of their better prospects and I think a pick for it.
And then he takes a sweetheart deal to go to New
New
York, where
Yep.
he was going to end up regardless.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
And leaving New Jersey fans in despair again.
New York was very smart to not make that trade.
Yeah, yeah.
Because they would have given an arm and a leg for a player that was going to come and sign with them anyways.
Mm-hmm.
Instead, Washington buys a rental who they know won't sign with them and leaves
and
as
then
soon as the playoffs end in the second round.
Washington lost a bunch of other people as well.
Justin Williams, I think, was on a downward slide. I feel like there are other players in their system that would have been, like, not necessarily an upgrade, but a lateral move for when he left. So I don't think that's that big of a slide. I think
Yeah.
re-signing Oshie to term with that kind of cash was
That was
stupid as hell.
idiotic. And the same thing with Orlov. They gave him too much for too long, I think. Going back to Jake Allen, do you think he'll be able to carry his strong second half showing into this season?
Well, of course.
You think so?
February we got Martin Brodeur as our goalie coach, and that definitely skyrocketed Allen's
you could
performance.
see, like, very good improvement after
but
that.
now Brodeur is not going to be the goalie coach for next season, but he is leading the search for a new one. I think we are close to getting a new one too. But no, I think Jake Allen will definitely keep up his high record into next season.
Yeah, because if you look at the history of goalies who had struggles, who eventually came back either in the season or the next season, it was usually because of a goalie coach. I know Fleury had a couple playoffs where he was pretty bad, and then he got a new goalie coach, turned everything around, and he actually became the great goalie he used to. I know that Mike Smith had a similar problem. Like, he was pretty bad for a couple years, and then they got a new goalie coach, and he was doing all right. I mean, still kind of streaky, but he was definitely better than some of the previous years. And I think...
Well, I don't think it's fair to compare Mike Smith to Jake Allen, because I think Jake Allen actually has an upside.
This is true.
That's true.
Mike Smith sucks.
Mike Smith doesn't roast teammates to the media.
Oh, you mean Jake Allen?
That's it, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wrong guy.
So let's talk about former not Pittsburgh.
Wait a second, hold on, I got another question.
What?
So, the Central is stacked with good goalies.
Central stacked with good teams too.
Well, yeah. Where does Jake Allen fit in that hierarchy? Is that you kind of can think of the teams in tiers,
Mm-hmm.
and even though the Stars signed Ben Bishop recently, I don't see them in the top tier. I don't even really see them in the medium tier, and that's because
Kari Lettinen.
Kari Lettinen is the backup, and he can't stop a beach ball anymore.
Well, I think he's good in a backup.
Nashville has Rene and Saros. That's a very, very good
tandem. That's a good tandem, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
The Blackhawks have a good starter and a very unproven backup now. I mean, where does Jake Allen fall in your mind as a Blues fan, considering the rest of your division?
Especially now, I think Allen is definitely close to top tier.
So, like, second tier?
Yeah.
I think he's right below Nashville.
I would say he's just under Rene right now.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Rene is just amazing.
Yeah, he was out of his mind.
Yeah.
Until Pittsburgh.
But Allen is amazing in his own right, especially now. So I think, maybe next year he could give Rene for a run for his money.
And do you think he's like number 2, or do you think there are people above or below Rene? Like, you got the Blackhawks, you got Dubnyk with Minnesota, and then Mason went to Winnipeg, and Winnipeg can kind of be something to reckon with if their backup can get their act together. So, like, is he like third in the division or second? Because you seem like he's like in the middle of the pack, kind of.
I'd say he's top middle of the pack.
I'd put him at number 2 in the division.
Really?
I don't think Corey Crawford's that great. Ben Bishop could be all right. No. Ben Bishop could be all right. I don't know if Steve Mason's quite strong enough to. He might be middle of the pack. I don't know. He's had a lot of trouble with his glove side. But I think if Jake Allen keeps playing the way he was, and Pekka does as well, I think those are the top 2 goalies in the division.
I think you give.
And I think Dubnyk. You'll see Dubnyk and the Wild regress probably. They're getting older, and I think they're all going to take a step back.
I think you undervalued Corey Crawford.
No. Yeah.
Both of you are gonna rip on Corey Crawford. I'm not jumping for joy at the name of Corey Crawford, but I do think in the hierarchy of the Central in terms of goalies, I think if Allen stepped up this year, he could match Crawford. But Crawford has more experience. He's more seasoned. He's played in Stanley Cup Finals. He's played in the Western Conference Finals. And I think a lot of the problem with the Blackhawks this year, which is like a lot of people jumped off Crawford this year and said, oh, he's not that great. He's overvalued.
Because he wasn't.
It's because the defensive in front of him was overtaxed. You got Duncan Keith and Seabrook and Hjalmarsson playing 30 minutes a game, and the other defenseman's glued to the bench because Quenneville's an idiot, and he doesn't like use his defense. He doesn't rotate his defense.
I thought Crawford wasn't that great. He's always been one for letting in a little bit of the soft goals, and I mean when you have a suppression king like Hjalmarsson, Keith, and Seabrook, and he was still giving up those kind of goals. I think that was a more fundamental issue in Crawford's game that I've seen. I mean, Fleury had the same problem, but he got a new goalie coach and turned it all around.
Like I said, I think like Allen and Crawford are pretty close to me. To me, the Blackhawks and the Blues are kind of in the same place where they're trying to rebuild quickly on the fly because they're having to shed pieces for cap issues. That's why they moved Yori Laterra for Shen. And it's the same reason the Blackhawks had to shed Hjalmarsson for Murphy. They're trying to keep the pieces to keep their windows open longer for those like core players. For you, Tarasenko. For the Hawks, Taves and Kane. But then you have the Preds, who are relatively young, with the exception of Rene, who are playing very, very well. And even though Rene's older, he's still playing out of his mind. And Saros could step in and probably be better than Mason, I think. Saros is one of the best backup goalies who's not going to ever hit the free market because he's being groomed to replace Rene at some point.
Yes.
So in the hierarchy, I think you're right. He's like middle to top. I don't think he's better than Crawford, though.
I do.
Yes, I think he also is.
Well, now you're wrong.
All right, that's fine.
Talking about former Wilkes-Barre Scranton coach Mike Yeo, I think he's going to be a great coach this season.
Oh, of course.
Especially after Ken Hitchcock departed. Did he go to Dallas?
Yeah, he did go to Dallas.
Is he an assistant there or the head?
He's the head.
He's head.
He replaced Lindy Ruff.
Oh yeah, Lindy Ruff.
Lindy got canned. I think Lindy might get hired as an assistant.
Yeah, he did.
No, complete with talking.
He's in New York.
Like with
the Rangers.
Elaine?
Yeah. He got hired as an assistant like a week ago.
Oh shit, I missed that. Damn it. There goes another guy off my list.
It was like right when they signed Shattenkirk.
Fuck, how did I miss that?
I don't know, man.
Alright.
So Mike Yeo, he came in, mid-season and just turned the whole team around. We went from not even, we weren't expecting to go to the playoffs at all. And then somehow miraculously got to round 2, which, is just a miracle on its own. But, with Mike Yeo for a full season next year, definitely we'll see, I expect to see a really good season.
Yeah, I thought a lot of the problems that the Blues were seeing weren't just in goaltending in the beginning of the year, but it was in players like Tarasenko and their strong offensive defenseman core. They weren't being allowed to do what they wanted to do because Ken Hitchcock's one of those old school coaches who you have to play in his system, and that only works if your name is Joel Quenneville. It won't work for Hitchcock anymore. Tarasenko hated him. Parayko hated him. A lot of people didn't like him because he was sheltering their men. You cannot shelter Tarasenko like that. He is your best player, your leading scorer, and to frustrate him like that leads to even less offense.
When you go back to Quenneville for a second, though, like you saw in the playoffs last year, Quenneville's system doesn't work.
It's degrading now because he doesn't have a bunch of veteran players, and every new player he seems to hate and put him in the doghouse, which increases the load on his better players.
I think another part of the problem with the Blues and why they got off to a rocky start was there's not a lot of players, but a handful of players that are paid $5 million or more. Not all of them kind of showed up. Like Laterra got moved because he was getting paid a lot of money to do absolutely nothing.
Yep.
And other guys like Schwartz and Steen weren't really there.
Yeah,
they weren't present.
Yeah,
that's true.
Schwartz actually ended the season and came to the playoffs pretty well.
Right, but it was after
he
the
had a
change.
really, really bad. He was another one affected by Ken Hitchcock's oppressive style of coaching, and you definitely once he got that goal, I think it was against Chicago later in the season. he started coming back because we were watching that game, right, where Schwartz finally scored,
I think so. Yeah.
and then all of a sudden everything started turning around for him, and he actually showed up in the playoffs along with Vladdy Sabutka, who came back.
Oh yeah.
He had a couple snipes that were pretty
Mhm.
nice.
So, last question: who is the least appreciated Blue that fans outside of the Blues fan base don't know? Like, if you were to pick one guy that like more people should know about, more people should pay attention to when they watch the Blues play, who would it be?
Oh man. Well, there are so many players that everyone does know. I mean, do people really pay attention to Schwartz? Or
That's true. He kind of took a back seat last year.
Yeah, I mean, I noticed him a couple playoff seasons ago when he was playing, of course, the
With the
Blackhawks in a first round or a
with
second
the
round.
STL line.
Yeah, I remember that when he was super effective, but like I didn't really notice him at all last season. I think the one guy that I think of, like if I'm looking at the Blues and I'm an expansion team and he's open, is Joel Edmondson.
Oh,
He's a young,
okay.
he had a good
Yeah.
playoff
left-handed
showing.
defenseman who can play top 4 minutes and suppresses a lot of shots but has offensive
I
upside.
forgot about
Like,
him.
Yeah.
I would
Same.
build a defense around that guy.
Yeah,
and he's underrated.
Mhm.
He is. He had a great. He led the Blues defense in goals, and had 2 game winners, I think, in
Yeah.
the first
Mhm.
just the first series.
If I'm Seattle when they get their expansion team and Joel
Right.
Edmondson is exposed, he's like my McNabb or my Shea Theodore. I'm going out of my way to take him, and
I
I'm
can
not
see him
cutting
as a
deals to
McNabb.
not take him. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah.
And finally, let's talk about that Braden Shen Joey Laterra trade.
I think that was an amazing trade.
I thought it was a good trade too. I was
A lot of Blues fans, didn't like it just because they're Laterra fans. Because everyone who's a Blues fan loves Laterra. They love
I like
Tarasenko.
Laterra.
What was so
Well-
great about Laterra?
He was part of the STL line.
Okay,
That's
but
pretty much it.
That's
Yeah.
it.
Because
He's
they-
just a fan
Well,
favorite.
he was out for most of the season, and then he came back for playoffs, and he just wasn't there.
Mm.
He was completely invisible.
Was the injury still just like nagging, or anything?
I don't know. I don't really know. I think he was perfectly healthy. He just wasn't on his game
Yeah.
for the entire postseason, and we can't have that. We're already like the Blues are already trying to shift, especially like their center strategies,
Mhm.
and Laterra just was not there. So, and he gets paid a lot,
Yeah.
and for not doing much, that's a big burden on our team.
Yeah. And then the return for him was pretty spectacular. Braden Shen.
Mm-hmm.
He's locked up till
Forever.
the 1920 season, and
Honestly, forever.
I mean he's not a center like Laterra was, but it's a strong left wing, and
Well, is Oscar Sundqvist a center?
Oscar Sundqvist was Pittsburgh's top center prospect.
Okay,
and,
so
we traded for him for superstar Ryan Reeves.
right, so June 23rd was a big day for the Blues because they shed Laterra, who's only making 4.7, and he actually gained cap by taking Shen. But when you look at player for player, that's an upgrade.
Mm-hmm.
And because he's so young, he elongates your window.
Yep.
Yeah, Shen's 25.
Right, and you won't have control when he becomes a UFA. But if you can convince him to stay and make him like a centerpiece in the organization, he'll stay.
Oh
But
yeah, I think it was a great
The
trade.
turnaround you had to give Philly to eat Laterra, a 2017 first, but it was a late first because you guys were so like far back in the playoffs that it didn't matter.
Yep.
And a conditional 2018 first, and I think that condition is the Blues making the playoffs in this coming season. Because those are typically what the conditions are. And then with the Reeves trade, I feel like you guys made that back up because you got that first round pick back and you only had to give back a second. So that was like a really good
You
deal. And
guys
ultimately,
fleeced us.
like the Blues took advantage of having a little bit more wiggle room than a team like the Blackhawks, and upgraded positions that needed to be upgraded while shedding players that were completely
Because
useless.
if Oscar Sundqvist, I thought he was a great prospect, especially in the center. If he makes the team out of training camp, he's a solid fourth line center. He's a big guy who can grind out a lot of pucks, grind out a lot of minutes. And if he can just transfer the way he plays in the AHL to the NHL, I think he can be a real effective player for you guys to transform your fourth line from that checking, grinding line with Scotty Upshall and Ryan Reeves on it
Ryan
into
Reeves is gone.
that's what I'm saying. It's
Oh.
transforming the line
Mm-hmm.
into a more productive, energetic line, like kind of how the Penguins had on their fourth line.
Yeah,
Because you need to be able to roll lines and make matchups hard.
one of our biggest problems was not having enough just depth on the lower lines. All of our points were coming from the top two lines. Our fourth line was kind of just there to hit people around.
Yeah, you need balanced scoring in the Central.
Yeah. And so, as much as I hate to see Reeves go,
He's an NHL superstar.
yeah.
Who's gonna beat Brandon Saad's head into the corners at the United Center?
Actually, the guy you drafted at 31st overall,
Clem Costin.
Clem
He
Costin.
signed, didn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, he's a great player.
But he
Yeah,
was in the
he's-
Dynamo crap in the KHL too, wasn't he?
Don't care. He's great.
He's
So
no,
is
he
gonna
actually
make the team?
He could.
he looks really good.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah. I think the Penguins made a huge mistake because they were targeting
He
him.
was so good. How did he slip to 31st?
Some
I think
things
it was.
happen, like
I
if
think
you-
it was for an injury.
Yeah,
He was higher up and then
Look-
got an injury.
Look at Timothy Liljegren.
Oh, that dude! I cannot believe.
He played with mono on the worst team in the SHL,
I-
and he dropped to like what was it, 17th or 16th?
16th, and he went with Toronto. I cannot believe that Toronto got literally 2 first overall picks 2 years in a row, and they got one of them at 16th. Liljegren, to me, is a number 1 overall who was just sick.
Yeah, I think.
2 years ago on draft boards, when you looked at this class, everyone had Liljegren on top for a reason.
Yeah, I think it was definitely his mono that set him back, and that's what turned scouts off. But you can't really be turned off by stuff like that.
So stupid.
That's that's stuff that's like temporary.
And it's
Yeah.
not a hockey injury; it's a medical thing. Like
Mhm.
it's the same as like a player. It's not a tendon, it's not a bone, it's not muscular. So why do you care?
Mm-hmm.
It takes the wind out of him, but your lungs come back.
He was still putting up great numbers
And he was
too.
still playing while he was sick.
Yeah.
Yep.
So like, why do you drop a guy's evaluative value because of that? But you go sign a guy who blew out his knee in Nick Merkley.
Well,
like
yeah,
in Arizona's case.
even with Nolan Patrick, he got injured too, and it was a knee injury, I think.
Yeah, no,
And-
he had a stomach thing. He had
Well, the Flyers are keeping him out of camp right now for the
A sports
second straight day because
he had a boil this time. They're
because
coming
he's
up with excuses now.
yeah. I think it'd be funny if he was a bust because I hate the Flyers.
No, well, I think Nolan Patrick he had a knee issue. He had a sports hernia or some sort of abdominal issue from hockey playing, and then of course he has this boil all of a sudden that kept him from playing at prospect camp, which is dumb to me.
That's probably why
Lance
Hischer
it
went
and get back
first.
out on the ice, but like I don't see why Liljegren fell that far, but I think
He
Costin
shouldn't have.
getting Costin at 31 was probably
That
a pretty
was-
good pick.
that was a
Yes.
Do you
steal.
think he cracks the roster out of camp?
Yeah, I think he will.
Yeah?
Just because
Yes.
he's a great talent, and like Jacoby said earlier, the Blues' depth wasn't too great, and so if they get someone like that, I think he can make a pretty decent impact this season.
Who do
Alright.
you hate more,
All right.
X or X? So this little game that I devised, it's who do you hate more, who do you like more, or who's more important. It's kind of like compare 2 players that everyone likes to argue about, and then the other 2 people who were asked the question have to talk about it. So for instance, I say Taze or Crosby, and Sam loses his shit.
So is this your actual posing question?
No, I'm gonna make you go
Okay,
first.
Good. Oh, me?
Yeah.
All right. Well, Jonathan Quick or Marc-Andre Fleury, both Pacific Division goaltenders.
Now,
Now,
we have to talk about it though, because we're the other 2 people.
Okay.
converse.
Quick or Fleury?
Which do I hate more?
Is it a hate, a like, or
Who's
who's better?
Who's better?
Okay, so it's a who's better.
Fleury.
Don't talk about the team that's going to be in front of them, especially because Fleury will
Who's
lose.
the better goaltender?
Yes. Who's the better
Fundamentally,
goalie?
yeah.
Fundamentally.
Okay, you say Fleury
Yes.
Am I allowed to give my opinion when you guys are done?
if you want.
Okay, good. I have one.
I know you do.
I think they're both very, very good goaltenders. I love to rip on Fleury to piss Sam off. I think Fleury's very, very good.
Mm-hmm.
I think just based on Quick's athleticism, like his ability to get across the net and make a dynamic play that's clutch. Like we've all seen him play for Team USA, and that's like the only time I can stomach cheering for him. But the amount of times he's robbed the Coyotes and robbed the Sharks on excellent net front goals, I still think with all of Quick's injuries, he's at least top 3 goalie in the league, and I think Fleury's like top 5, top 8 to me. but I think Quick's better. I just think his athleticism takes him over the edge. I mean, if I'm going to draft a goalie and I have to choose between those two and Corey Crawford, I'm still taking Quick. I said that Crawford does make Sam make a face, but I think Quick is better.
Okay.
And Sam, of course, we know where this is going.
Well, in my opinion, Fleury, he's kind of old, but
This is
he's kind of
That's
old.
fair.
But for how old he is, he still exists. He's still there all the time. He can still make game-changing saves. I mean, look at him in the last playoffs. He was crazy, like all over the place. I think he's just fundamentally a great goalie.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that.
Mm-hmm.
Well, here's my thing is I've watched Fleury play a lot. I've seen his struggles and I've seen his great seasons, and he, like Jonathan Quick, is a very athletic goalie. He can stretch really far, which is actually one of the shortcomings of Matt Murray. He's a big guy, but he actually pulled his groin while stretching before the first game against Columbus. And Fleury, just like Jacoby says, he's there to make the big saves. Game 7 against Washington in 2009, he came up with a huge save on Ovechkin, breakaway, turned the whole game around. Penguins won that game in the series. Same thing actually this year against Ovechkin, robbed him with his stick. Penguins came back and just
But that
destroyed
2009, that was what 8 years ago.
Yeah,
he
and
was a
he's-
younger goalie when that
he
happened.
still did it this
Now
year.
this year, that's a stick save. That's different.
But he was there.
Okay, that's fine. He was there, but it's a stick save.
Yeah, and I
Those
think
those are easier to
he's
make than
probably
a
the
leg save
best.
where you have to stretch yourself out across the net.
however much you don't agree with the shootout deciding games, I think he's the best shootout goalie there
Fleury,
is.
yeah, he's a great shootout
He
goalie.
can rob anybody.
But how many games a year do you do a shootout
Surprisingly, there was a lot
for the
for the Penguins.
Penguins?
They actually had a kind of a bit of a rough year, and Matt Murray seemed to always be the one in the shootout, and he's bad in
Quick
shootout.
question: How many games does Vegas actually get to take to a shootout? Because the team in front of them is going to be so bad. Like defense, they're going to be good.
That's
half
why
decent.
I think they'll be able to get to
They
overtime.
won't score enough goals. Like other teams in the Pacific have enough offense to eventually work their way through that defense, particularly
Not
late
the
in games. Not the Kings, because I
The
think
Kings take
are
everything to
overvalued.
overtime.
But
No, yeah.
they have
I hate
Camilleri
watching
now
them.
again, Sam, so they're going to be good.
Larry, an old guy.
But like, Fleury may be good in shootouts, but how many shootouts is he going to face when his defense is going to get run down and his offense can't score goals when all you have is James Neal and Jonathan Marchessault?
Well, I don't know. That was just something
And
I like to
Teemu
point out.
Pulkkinen.
Oh, right.
Right.
So Alex, your turn.
Okay.
Who's worse, I guess?
Does it have to be worse, or can it be like who do you
It
like
can
more?
be anything.
Who do you like more to play with Erik Karlsson if you were making like a Swedish national team? Oliver Ekman-Larsson or Victor Hedman? To play with Karlsson, knowing how Karlsson plays.
Jacoby, you want to go first?
No, I'll let you take this one.
All right. Well,
That's a hard question.
it's a very hard
Yeah, it
question.
Because they're both not identical. They play very differently, but they both add value
Well, yeah,
to
they're
both-
Karlsson.
Left-handed defensemen to complement Erik Karlsson. I might go with Hedman on it, just because he's a little more defensive on his end. I mean, I love Ekman-Larsson, but he is more of an Erik Karlsson than anything, and I don't think his defense is quite as good as Victor Hedman's, which is part of why Hedman was a Norris candidate this year. I think Hedman would be a good complement to Karlsson, just because he's better defensively. Because Karlsson needs someone who not only can bring the offense,
His
but
Mark Mathot.
well, yeah, but a better Mark Mathot, someone who can bring the offense and stay back and be a staple rock on the blue line, while Erik Karlsson goes and plays forward number 4.
I have to agree with you.
Yeah,
I concur.
that wasn't very.
It seems difficult, but when you break it down, like when you're posed that question, you're like shocked, like, oh crap, those are like, if you're
Two-
naming the 3 best Swedish defensemen in
Oh,
hockey
yeah,
right now, it's
undoubtedly,
those 3, and you're like,
yep.
well, who do I put with the number 1? And it's like, well, Oliver Ekman-Larsson has all these offensive upsides, and he likes to go fishing behind the net on the offensive zone, and this, that, and the other thing. But then you think about it, and it's like, Hedman is an underrated two-way defenseman who, because he plays in Tampa Bay, doesn't get enough rep. It's like Ekblad in Florida. Because they're a Florida team, they don't get rep. Because they're in the Atlantic and they play Montreal and Ottawa and Toronto, and the Canadian media loves them and doesn't want to talk about the Florida teams. But unless it's Stamkos going to Toronto because that's their pipe dream this year.
Last year. That's been infuriating me about Ekman Larsson because he's in Arizona. He's never in Norris talks. I mean, not like this year. He was bad this year, but that was for family matters. But he rarely gets into Norris talks. But he has been carrying the back end. Even that last couple of years with Yandel, I thought he was better. And I think he doesn't get the credit.
2012, Ekman Larsson was better than Yandel.
I don't think Yandel.
No, I take that back.
No,
that's
because that was his rookie
2014,
year.
he was better than Yandel.
Ekman Larsson, I don't think gets the credit he deserves. Anywhere near it, actually.
No.
Sure, they'll mention his name on the best defenseman in the NHL. They're like, oh, you can't forget Ekman Larsson. Then they don't talk about him. You need to talk about him. He's a great player.
Mm-hmm.
So,
all right.
What
do
are
we
your?
hate more?
Who do you?
Oh man. Okay. I wasn't ready for this.
Yeah, I wasn't either.
I told you this a couple days ago.
Yeah, I know.
You didn't tell me this a couple days ago.
He didn't tell you this. His
My
fault.
bad.
Okay.
Make something piss Sam off.
It can be anything from franchises to arenas.
Yeah.
It can be anything.
It can be anything.
Okay. I'm gonna do this one for arenas.
Mm.
So Coyotes Arena. What's it called again?
Gila River.
Yeah, Gila River. Or what's the Kings Stadium? Staples Center. Staples Center or Gila River? Which do you hate more?
Oh, hate more?
Yeah.
I hate the Staples Center more because they have the Kings there. They have a shit ton of concerts there. They have the Lakers and the Clippers there. And I mean, I just hate LA in general.
GRA, without a doubt. Its location.
Okay. Well, okay. If we're talking about location.
No, we're talking arena. Arena is a whole encompassing thing. I don't care that two annoying basketball teams play there, and the team that had Kobe's number hanging in the rafters, and I don't care that the Staples Center has a lot of concerts. What matters is that the Staples Center is bigger, it's nicer, it's downtown, it's as accessible as it can be in the traffic jam that is Los Angeles, and GRA is in the middle of nowhere. It's smaller. The seats aren't as good. It doesn't have as many. It's not as good for concerts. The acoustics aren't good even with like hockey sounds. You hear the echoing of the horn after the horn turns off. It doesn't eat the noise like a lot. If you look up at the rafters at the United Center in Chicago, they have sound reduction material in the rafters to pad the sound so that it doesn't echo as bad and the reverberation isn't bad.
Man,
because it will reflect
though.
back down onto the ice when they're playing with the crowd noise, and it's already loud enough in there. So GRA is by far worse. I think the only stadium that's worse is BB&T in Florida, and it's because it's so hulking massive and it's in a shopping mall and it's mostly empty.
Let me ask you this question though.
Okay.
Does Staples Center have a Tim Hortons?
Negative. No, it does not.
There you go. That's all you need to know. It doesn't have a Tim
No,
Hortons.
I think how
It
many
loses.
how many NHL stadiums in the U.S. part of the league have Timmy's?
I know
Detroit,
we do.
probably.
Because that place has
I
the
didn't-
best
wait,
coffee ever.
Gila River has a
They
Tim
have
Hortons?
they have
They have
a
two
stand.
Tim
This year,
Hortons.
actually, they're gonna
They
have
have,
another.
they have
Three.
a stand, and then they have an actual a little.
Setup, yes.
My
Setup.
question is, why didn't I know this?
It's right next to the poutine stand.
Yeah.
Where the other place where we
Smokies.
we cater to.
Oh yeah, we get up right up in there, and we get all our Canuck buddies together, and we go get some poutine and some dimmies.
You know, when they come down from Montreal and they
Oh,
just
yeah.
wanna have a
Yep.
good time and they wanna go golfing.
Oh yeah, you know, some snowbirds from
They
Vancouver,
go live in Santan
from
Valley or Sun
Toronto.
City.
You know,
Yeah.
maybe a couple from Winnipeg.
East Mesa.
Oh yeah, because if you look at
Apache Junction.
some of the neighborhoods down here, you even see Canadian flags flying. Because all the snowbirds, they have
You
houses
sound like
down
fucking Mike Babcock.
here. Oh, you know, Mike Babcock, you know, we gotta get out there. You know, we gotta push the pace. You know, I'm confident in our young guys' ability to score.
You gotta rake a snake across your neck, like your Crosby.
Oh man.
All right, next topic.
Brandon Dubinsky,
What are we doing
piece
next?
of crap. So, actually, Jacoby's question was a good jumping point into Alex's Arena article that he put out this week. If you haven't gotten the chance to read it yet, it's on the Five for Howling SB Nation page. and it's a great in-depth look into making you feel even worse about the Coyotes getting a new arena. So you want to explain your article?
So, a lot of times when fans think about the arena, they're like, "Oh, we just got to find a place, and we'll have the money, and it will work." And then, but if you're building it in a municipality, you have to worry about like zoning and general plans, which is the legal talk for this land allows you to build a certain thing. Like if you live in a community, like a neighborhood, it's a master planned community that's zoned a certain type of residential by legal standards. And you can't just buy a piece of land and build an arena on it because there are legal consequences to that. There's economic sustainability consequences to that, and this all came about by someone suggesting that a big empty plot of land at 44th Street and the 202, right where the 143 ends, it crosses over the 202 when you're going westbound.
Mm-hmm.
There's a huge plot of dirt on the right side of the freeway to the north side of the freeway just past 44th Street.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like big enough for an arena and a massive parking lot, maybe like an Arby's. So like immediately someone sees that big piece of land just to the east of downtown near the airport or near downtown enough to say, hey, we should put a Coyotes arena there. And I'm like, that's zoned multifamily. And that's part of Phoenix's general plan as either industrial or multifamily. And that neighborhood isn't good and the congestion and traffic patterns don't fit. And I'm like, in my head, because I have a geography and an urban planning background, I'm thinking, that's not going to work. And on top of that, it may be like theoretically in a good location. It's really not. It's really in a bad spot, and it's going to ultimately be a problem down the road. And in terms of like not environmental, but economic sustainability, you want it to be in a community or in an area where it will prosper from the people, and the people around it will prosper from it. Okay, so the multifamily surrounding it, maybe you have some employees, but is that part of the is that neighborhood going to be improved by it? No, and is the likelihood of maintaining that arena going to be damaged by the neighborhood itself? Meaning, like, is there going to be vandalism? Is there going to be robberies? Are cars going to be broken into in the parking lot? You got to think like long-term economic stability for both people living nearby and the stadium itself, which is why I think building in Tempe along Tempe Town Lake is super important because it's more of a college community. It's more like entertainment-y.
Light rail is nearby.
And you have the Tempe that's not Mills, it's Tempe Marketplace. Mm-hmm. So you have those kind of amenities to kind of like support it because it fits more of the typology of what a stadium is. You look at Westgate and the idea of it is fantastic, but the application of it in the middle of a cotton field at Maryland and the Agua Fria Freeway in the middle of nowhere is poor execution.
Mm-hmm.
My ideal, and I left this out of the article because I'm reserving the right to make like a short list of places that it should happen because I'm working theory on it. I'm like applying geography theory because I'm an idiot. Is that Tempe Beach Park is pretty big for a park. And I think if you built part of it up and put an arena there, it would be Nashville-esque in that you come down Mill where all the bars are and all the different places and the shopping, and there's a big Coyotes arena that opens up at the end on the edge of the lake.
Like Broadway in Nashville.
Exactly, except the Nashville Stadium is at the top of Broadway and you go down to the river. It's flipped where the arena is at the river. And it, like aesthetically, it fits. You have the Papagos in the background and the zoo and stuff. And you have a mountain right there, and ASU's on the other side of the hill, and all these aesthetically, locationally, you have enough parking infrastructure in the area.
The light
Across
rail's
the street
right
is a brand new office complex that could hold all the facilities for the organization. Like light rail is right there. The Tempe streetcar project that's going in is right there. It's zoned semi-properly. There are some political tape that you'd have to cut through to allow the city of Tempe, so public land, to allow them to build an arena there. It fits. That's the biggest thing, is it may be built up, but it fits. And I was kicking this idea around a lot more last night, thinking about it when I drove past it to go to the Diamondbacks game. And it occurred to me, one, it'd be really cool if they made it like something that keeps the cold in, but a glass roof where you can look up, because Phoenix is one of the few markets in the NHL where you can look up and actually see the stars outside, because there's a lot of light pollution, but not too bad.
That'd be a huge installation problem.
The other thing is the planes going over is kind of fun. But I think the biggest thing is to have one end zone that opens up. And it doesn't have to be glass. or part of it could be glass, but opens up like the Diamondbacks arena. You know how they have the big door things on the side, and you can have, like Tempe Beach Park has their outdoor concerts. You open those up and put the stage in front of the lake with the mountain. You have a concert deck basically, and if you find a way to engineer the end zone seats where they collapse and go down, and you can put it at ice level with the arena seating go around like a horseshoe, and the band stage is just a little elevated above ice level in that end zone with the doors open like I'm saying, you have a very good view, potentially a place to put outdoor pyrotechnics in those mountains behind it for the show. So you have entertainment value in Tempe. Tempe has a bigger entertainment place for concert, like big time concerts, because you have the Marquee Theater literally across the lake, but the Marquee Theater's pretty small.
Yeah.
You would have a full-size NHL arena there, and you could potentially move ASU's basketball team there because it would be big enough, and it's big enough for college basketball. It's not big enough for the NBA, but
then again,
it's been clear that Sarver doesn't want to work with the Coyotes at all. So in my mind, and I'm probably drawing things that don't make sense and probably wouldn't work, it makes a lot of sense. But what I was getting at is that there's red tape that fans don't think about, that maybe there's a deal in place they can't talk about because they're negotiating with the municipality over zoning law, or they're negotiating with the municipality over reorganizing an already built space, such as a park or such as a multifamily that is old and needs to be torn down, and redeveloping it for an arena. But it takes time, and maybe this is we've been hearing for years, it's like, oh, it's coming, we're making progress. Maybe you are making progress. We just don't know about it because of working with environmental sustainability organizations to make sure that or not environmental, economic, to make sure that the area you're building in is going to succeed from it and the arena will succeed from it as well. But also like dealing with the planning people, because that just has to happen. And you have to go through city councils. And with an arena like this where it's going to be in some way associated with the public government, you have to worry about how public perception is going to feel about this. So a lot of this is probably back channel study sessions with city councils and planning commissions, like away from the public, because the public will automatically have an adverse reaction thinking that it will have public money in it. And that's like the biggest problem here with like Arizona politics is public money for private stadiums is a bad thing, and its poster child is obviously Gila River Arena. So
I remember when it was announced that the Coyotes and ASU were going to go in on a deal together at Karstens Golf Course, right across from Tempe Marketplace. Fantastic location. Everyone was super excited about it. And then ASU, it all fell through.
Well, it fell through because the state legislature wouldn't allow it, because they thought public funding would be coming into it, so they shut it down.
I thought it had to do with ASU also picking a research building over the stadium.
Picking a research building over the stadium for that location?
No, not for the location, just for the money allocation.
Oh, so they were going to put money into the stadium instead of a new facility?
Yeah.
That may have something to do with it, because the Board of Regents doesn't. Does the Board of Regents control like development of new property on campuses for state universities, or is that the legislator?
I think they have a say so. I don't know how strong it is.
Or this legislator then that gets upset if it doesn't happen?
I can't answer that. I don't really know.
I don't know, because I don't go to ASU like you
I
guys do.
I was just hoping that with the hiring of Patterson as the new president or CEO or
President CEO.
Yeah, he has ties to ASU and he's worked with them before. So I was hoping maybe in some capacity he could get that deal back up and running, or maybe find somewhere else in the Tempe area.
Oh, you know where it's going to happen? They're either going to, in Scottsdale's or Tempe, it's technically still Tempe, McClintock, on the other side of where the Phoenix Rising Arena is a bunch of pretty dead industrial. But it has a pretty good freeway access. You can get
That's
off
over near Oceanside.
Yeah, it's right next to Oceanside. You could theoretically tear down Oceanside and build a new practice facility there. I mean, and ASU hockey would love that.
Right, because it would be a
ASU
great spot
hockey
for a practice
might even
facility.
help kick money in on the practice facility.
Yeah, I mean,
because they play their games there, so they'd have to put like at least 4,000 to 5,000 seats in, which would be bigger than what Oceanside has now, which is probably a couple benches and some picnic tables.
Yeah, they have a few bleachers on the south side, and then the Inferno section on the
which looks cramped and
east
tiny.
side. Yeah, it was actually a fun little section when I went to a game there.
When they kick the crap out of
it
SNHU.
was like 11-0, I think.
Yeah, So I think that would be a good spot. I think if because the MLS is going to happen in the next 2 years,
Oh,
without
really?
a doubt.
You think
Absolutely,
make
we're on
the
their
jump?
short list because we have a USHL team that's successful, and the rising
USHL?
USL, whatever. I'm so used to hockey. They got investors who are willing to invest in a MLS level arena that has amenities to alleviate the heat restraints, basically. So put a shade over it, the field. That's maybe retractable. Maybe it's like the canvas shades that come back and forth. Who knows what they're gonna do? But they have investors for it, and that's the site they're gonna build it on. And with the Native American reservations, there's far less planning restrictions and government restrictions that go into developing facilities on that land. And the reason is because the Indian reservations want to absorb a lot of the funding or absorb a lot of the cash revenue that comes from it. And believe me when I say the Salt River Indian Reservation would love nothing more than their own arena to control concerts at that is on their land where they can pull revenue out of it because they control their own taxes.
I think Arizona is a great location for a soccer team because we're right on the border with Mexico, and a lot of people immigrate from Mexico to Arizona, and so you have a lot of soccer fans coming from Mexico or are the children of Mexican immigrants, and so they're here watching these Phoenix Rising games and helping create a soccer culture
And
here.
you see like University of Phoenix Arena during like when we have like Honduras or Guatemala or Mexico.
Yeah, we had a
Latin American-
Mexico versus USA game.
Yeah, like Latin American games at U of P, there are more Latin American fans there cheering for their teams respectively than the Team USA people. And I mean, maybe in Columbus you'll actually sell out to Team USA people, but here, like, if you're looking at national soccer teams, Mexico reigns supreme. So, like, I think it would be great to build a dual complex where you have like an outdoor facility in the soccer stadium and an indoor facility in a Coyotes arena. And with dealing with the Indians, it's a lot easier, and there's far less stringent things, and really the Indians can do whatever they want. So it's a great location, and even going further north along the 101, like if you wanted to do it near the D-back spring training facility where there's a huge mall already, and it's in Scottsdale, there's Top Golf, there's a casino and a hotel and a resort, like all these amenities that are already technically like draws, which was my thing is like you can build a nice NHL arena near a mall, but in the middle of a suburb where nobody goes, who cares? You got to build it in a place where people are going to go. People are going to go to a D-backs or a Rockies spring training game. People are going to go to Top Golf in Scottsdale already. People are going to the casino and the resort. So you've already got like, not necessarily tourists, but people in Phoenix go to these places.
Entertainment draw.
Entertainment draw. And the other thing is like the same thing with Riverview Park in North Mesa. You have the Cubs there for a month and a half a year. Sure, that's not the whole hockey season. That's about the end. But I'd imagine if you brought a bunch of NHL teams through on a pretty long homestand during spring training, where all of those teams happen to have NHL franchises, that like for a spring training team, like you bring the Blackhawks in during that series, or you bring Vancouver in because Seattle fans are technically Vancouver fans at this point. You bring teams that are like nearby MLB teams that have spring training facilities, and they bring them through. You'll fill your stadium consistently, whether the team is good or not. So if you put it near a spring training facility, that's a good plus. I just think there are lots of options, but you have to consider these other extraneous variables.
All right, let's move on to another quick game called Three Trades, and these are three trades you would make right now.
One for each of us.
One for each. Oh, so I have one trade, you have one trade, and he has one trade.
Yep.
Okay, and all right, so it's your game. You start.
So, hold on. I need to get this roster up first. I firmly believe that the Vegas Golden Knights are in a little bit of trouble.
Yes.
They have
With George McPhee at the helm, they're always in trouble.
a massive amount of picks that don't belong to them in the future, and that's great for a team that's new and building and whatever. But they have 13 forwards, most of whom I would consider bottom line or AHL forwards. Mikhail Grabovski is probably going to be LTIR. If he isn't, he's not going to be very good. David Clarkson is obviously LTIR, and he's eating a ton of cap, but that's okay for them. And then you have like Marchessault and James Neal and Vadim Shipachyov and Cody Eakin and Eric Halla. That's like pretty much it. And Derek Perron can play like middle 6 minutes. David Perron can play like middle 6 minutes. I keep tripping on myself. But then you have this like log jam of defensemen, and all of them are left-handed, and nobody.
Except for Shea Theodore? No.
Colin Miller and Derek Anglin.
Really? I
So
thought
they're
there
going to
was
have
a
to keep
good
those
young
two
one.
because they don't have any right-handed defensemen.
Oh my god.
There's
Mhm.
no team in the league, to my knowledge, that has like way too many right-handed defensemen.
The Blues.
Do the Blues have too many right-handed?
Well, they used to.
defensemen?
They got rid of
Yeah.
Shattenkirk.
So now you don't.
Yeah.
So your surplus is gone, and like Shattenkirk to anywhere would have been like too expensive for another team to bring back anyways. So you got to move people, and you look down the list of people on the defense. Vegas has expressed interest in keeping Jason Garrison for reasons beyond my understanding.
Oh my god.
They're obviously keeping McNabb. They're keeping Colin Miller. They're keeping Derek Anglin. They're keeping Shea Theodore because he's the future. And then Nate Schmidt. So that leaves like Clayton Stoner.
Oh yeah, Nate Schmidt is a righty.
Nope, he isn't. He's
He's
lefty.
not?
He's a lefty. You got Lucas Spiza, Clayton Stoner, and John Merrill. You basically have to move some of the, if not all of them, at least two of them. And in my mind, I'm looking back at Vancouver, and I'm saying, you guys kind of need bodies. I'm also looking at Colorado. In fact, I'm looking more at Colorado, and I'm saying you guys need warm bodies. Give us a second or a third, and I'll send you Clayton Stoner. So my thing is a pick to Colorado, like a early mid pick for Clayton Stoner or Lucas Spiza, because they need a top four defenseman to eat minutes in Colorado if they're going to try to float the boat this year, because you can't play a defense on only Tyson Barrie. And the same thing goes with Colorado. Like, you can finally push Oliu Levy, said it right this time, into the lineup. But who else do you got? You don't have a ton. You have Chris Tanev still. Who else do you have? Who else do you have in Vancouver?
Not much.
Not much. That's the point. Is like you're looking at teams who really don't have defense
You
because
have that big
left-handed.
That I think Russian guy, number 88.
Tryamkin went back to the KHL.
Oh, and then
He fled.
what about
You got Edler, Tanev, Gudbranson, Delzato, Hutton, Stetcher, Biega, Weirkoch.
Hutton's a good one.
Okay, so maybe like 4 to 5 legit defensemen. You add Stoner to that mix, okay, you're getting better. You add to Colorado's list any defenseman.
Yeah, they have destroyed their defense.
They have 3 defensemen on lock. Colorado needs like 2 defensemen from Vegas, and I cannot believe that deal hasn't happened yet for I don't know, a 3rd round pick in 18 and 19.
So that's the trade you make.
A defenseman to Colorado.
All right. Well, the Penguins lost Nick Bonino, which we knew was going to happen because he was going to get overpaid, and honestly, he wasn't that great. And so I'm kind of glad we lost him. But then we went and traded Oscar Sundqvist, our best center prospect. And then all of a sudden, Matt Cullen's probably going to retire, and we have Crosby Malkin. But who do you have after that?
You can go get Mike Fisher. He's an upgrade.
No. I will tell you who we're going to get. We're
Tell me.
going to bring back Jordan Stahl. It's going to be luxurious. He's a great guy for that third-line center role. And his brother's gone from Carolina, and he's actually one of the older guys on Carolina, and he's only 29. I think he's a perfect fit for the Penguins. And if the Penguins send over someone like Brian Dumoulin or Derek Pouliot in a pick or two, probably like 2 good picks.
Isn't Dumo going to arbitration?
Yes. And Chiri, I believe.
Would it be worth moving Dumo for it?
I would.
Okay.
He's taking Mata's spot in the first
Have you
pair.
considered Carolina's needs and surpluses?
Yes, they have a surplus on defense.
And you want to send them Dumoulin as a defenseman?
Oh, he's a great defenseman.
Sure, but that's still too many defensemen.
No, I think one more defenseman and they have a great defensive core.
What defenseman do they send back? They just sent Ryan Murray to get bought out by Calgary.
Yeah, take his spot.
Right, but who do you send back to Pittsburgh to fill that defensive void?
Oh, we have
There's a certain amount of value you have to be reciprocating.
I'm not sure I understand your question.
Let me look at the cap friendly for Carolina.
Oh, there.
You need to be
near
taking
the floor.
a defenseman back with you to Pittsburgh to fill a spot. And
Why?
also to free that spot up for a Dumoulin. Where is Carolina? It's technicalities. They have 6 defensemen. Slavin, who they just signed up for forever.
Mhm.
Falk, who's their cornerstone.
Mhm.
They're willing to move Noah Hannafin. Do you take back like a Klaus Dahlbeck?
I would.
He's a 7th defenseman. He
Penguins
can come
may
in
be
and
seventh.
step in.
I mean, we have Chad Ruedel, and we just signed someone else. But I think Chad Ruedel can be sent down, or at least put on waivers. I think they signed him to a one-way
So
deal.
Dumoulin for Stahl and Dahlbeck, but you need to send something else
Oh yeah,
to
picks.
sweeten it. Picks. So you said Picks and Dumo for Stahl and Dahlbeck,
Mhm.
just to fill a defensive spot.
Yeah, and I think that allows my boy Oli Moneta to go back to Chris Letang's left side, and then you have Schultz and Cole as a great second pair,
All right.
and then Derek Pouliot is. I know that he's been defensively irresponsible, which is not very good for a defenseman, but Jim Rutherford believes that he can make the jump finally this year. A former 8th overall pick in 2012. I think he'll make the jump, and then he can play with Chad Ruedel or Klaus Dahlbeck on the third pair.
All right.
Jacoby, what's
If you
your
were to
trade?
make a trade right now, looking at teams across the league, or just the Blues, who do you think?
I think the best trade would be Crosby for Taves.
Kill your
1 for 1. Who says no?
No, I'm kidding.
Everyone says
Um,
no.
Well, I really only pay attention to the Blues.
Okay, so
Make a
who's the
Blues
trade
trade.
that you would make that would make the Blues better right now?
Well, we've already made such good trades so far.
You wouldn't move anybody? Is there like a contract you hate that you'd want to get ditch? Or a player around the league you think, oh, he'd fit well right here?
No, I think we honestly have a decent composition as of right now.
What about a backup goalie?
Carter Hutton's not that bad.
Oh yeah, I forgot about
Yeah,
starter.
no,
Carter Hutton's not bad.
No, he's not bad at all.
Oh man, I totally forgot about starter.
So like goalie wise, we're fine.
defense, you're good.
Yeah, defense we're also fine. Offense, we got
You just
we're
got
s-
Bo Bennett. I mean, what else do you
we're
need?
Dude's gonna get scratched most of the season. What's
Yeah,
the deal?
poor Bo Bennett.
no, yeah. Offensive wise, we're definitely moving in a much better direction. It's not really any trades really that we'd need to go through with as of right now. Got rid of Laterre. We didn't need him. Got rid of Reeves. Didn't need him really, even though I wanted to keep him.
We didn't need him.
But who's going to protect Crosby?
Crosby couldn't protect himself.
No, Malkin
Sometimes.
will kill someone if someone.
Malkin, I love Angry Gino. That's hilarious.
Okay, so no trade, no deals.
No.
You're done.
Nope.
Okay.
All the
What's
best
next,
deals.
Sam? Oh, we didn't talk about Houston. Do we want to talk about Houston? I never got to Houston.
Fine.
I don't really want to talk about it because it makes me sad.
Talk about it now.
It's gonna. Well,
Talk about it. You brought it up. Talk about
fuck
it.
you, Sam. Okay, so it's
God.
been breaking over the last couple days. Kat Silverman brought it up for FanRag, and then NBC picked the topic up today and blew it up. And it's that Houston's owner for the Rockets is selling the Toyota Center, and he's selling the Rockets as an organization, and he's the only reason Houston doesn't have an NHL team because it is one of the largest cities in the country. And when the Arrows were good, way back in the day, I think it's like the IHL is what it was called, they were selling pretty decent number of seats, and they were successful as an organization. So there's a lot of speculation out there that why doesn't Houston get a spot? They have an NHL-ready arena that fits an NHL-sized ice rink. The stadium is configured to it, and it would even out the divisions at 32, where each division has 8 teams. The Coyotes, a lot of this suddenly puts an issue on the Coyotes, even though Barroway has said we're keeping the team here. Phoenix is worth it. Houston's a lot of money. There's media money to be had there. Moving, say the Coyotes, and it hurts to say the Coyotes move to Houston, and an expansion team comes to Seattle. All the divisions are even. There's no realignment issues, and the Central has another team in Texas, and Texas is a lot of people and a lot of money to be had, and there's obviously lots of investors with the oil and gas companies there. So, Houston's suddenly in the race, and if Houston did come in as an expansion team, where does that put Seattle? Because Seattle's been dragging their feet on an arena,
Where
a
does that
legit
put
arena,
Quebec?
forever. And the only way Quebec's happening is through relocation of an Eastern Conference
Well,
team. Let's be clear.
think about it. If Houston gets added, that evens it out as just an expansion team.
Uh-huh.
That leaves 32 teams.
Yep.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, think about it. If we add Seattle, and Quebec as expansion teams, then all of a sudden it's still even.
It's 34, but divisions are uneven. It makes the Pacific and the Atlantic super, super hard to get into a playoff spot, and makes the Central and the
Then
Metro
go
way
back
easier.
to the 8 seeds.
Thank you. I'd love to do that anyways. But
Gary Bettman,
get it done.
you suck. Except for keeping the Coyotes here. Good job.
So I think it kind of spurns a relocation issue because now there's actually a market available, quote unquote, that is as competitive as
No.
Phoenix in terms of like money available.
No.
Portland and Kansas City are close to us.
Ew, no.
Houston
They're not
is
getting teams.
arguably better.
Mm-hmm.
Talk about Atlanta.
But Seattle has been dragging their feet
they need
for
a
so
third
long.
team.
You got to
Yeah.
wonder, when will Bettman walk away from Seattle and say, all right, Houston gets a team, we're going to even the divisions, screw off. And I firmly believe Quebec won't get an expansion team. They'll get their own relocation team,
Carolina.
whether it's Carolina, whether, and I
Florida.
don't believe it will be, it's Florida, but Florida's organization in general is kind of a mess right now. And then the Islanders, for all their trials and
True.
tribulations, their ownership is a little shaky, and there have been like talks of them going back to Hartford. Who's to say Quebec doesn't say, we'll spot you a little bit of money if you can re-sign, not Tavares. Is it Tavares? It's Tavares.
Tavares.
I mix him up with Stamkos.
Why?
They're the same person. They're both
They're very
good.
different players.
I know, but I mixed them up. Okay, so that was just my thing. Like Houston's suddenly a threat now.
Mailbag.
Mailbag. Okay, so I asked for a mailbag, and some of the people I know online from my Five for Howling responded. You guys can respond to this. You won't get. Neither of you have heard these questions, so this is going to be good. They're mostly Coyotes. One of them isn't, but you've watched the Coyotes marginally enough to know some of these things, right?
Yeah.
Jacoby?
Mhm.
Okay. If no more trades, who flips to wing on the Coyotes from @AZ Sphinx?
Flipping to wing. Well, obviously Jordan Martinook can play anything. Are we talking about a center that flips to wing?
Anybody. Well, flips wings maybe from left wing to right wing.
Right. I could see Toby Reeder being able to do it.
Keller.
My problem with Keller doing it is he's really young, and he's been the best player on all the teams he's been on so far. So he's gotten to play the position he wants, and he doesn't have much experience on the opposite wing.
I don't think that's an issue. Do you have an opinion on this topic?
Not really.
Okay.
I mean, technically, Keller is technically a center, right?
Technically,
That-
in the NCAA, he plays center. In the NHL, there's no way in flying hell Clayton Keller plays center. He's too small.
Mhm.
He's way too. You could bulk him up like they've been doing Dylan Strome. There's zero chance he
Yeah,
plays
but-
center.
Clayton Keller's 5'10".
Getzlaf-
Dylan Strome's like 6'3".
Getzlaf will eat him alive.
Oh yeah. I mean, the only reason Dylan Strome's basically in the conversation still is he's got good stick handling, shot, he's big, but he can't skate.
So he's Antoine Vermette.
Yeah, that's why he's a good center.
So
Anyone else that can flip?
McGinn,
McGinn?
if
Yeah,
he stays, but
McGinn.
I'd love for McGinn to go. And
I,
Chaika said in an
he's
interview.
adding to the log jam.
Chaika said in an interview today that he's working on one more deal for the offseason before training camp.
McGinn
it's
for a
still going.
right-handed defenseman.
McGinn for a 7th-round pick who says no.
No.
Yeah. Chances Tocchet plays the Killer D's together. You know who the Killer D's are, right?
Who?
Oh, jeez.
Domi
Domi.
Duclair. Possibly
Oh,
Dvorak.
okay.
Chances that all
Okay.
three play together.
All three? Are we adding Dvorak into the Killer D's?
Yep.
I would love that.
Chances, 1 to 100%.
I'd say Tocchet has 70 to 75% of playing with
To start them that way,
Tocchet has come in already saying he loves Max Domi, and Max Domi loves Anthony Duclair. And if we saw Domi and Dvorak playing well together last season, and Domi and Duclair have played well together historically, I think it's a match made in heaven, and I think Tocchet loves his young players. And I think if he can be the Duclair whisperer like he was the Kessel whisperer with that kind of sniper mentality, I think he can get Duclair to stop gripping his stick so tight and stop passing up shooting opportunities. I think they can play together, and I think Tocchet will at least try it. And if it doesn't work, then he'll have to separate them. But I think he'll try it.
okay. Anything to add?
No, that's pretty good.
Okay.
You got it down pat, Sam.
Sam knows what he's talking about. Should the team be looking for another right-handed defenseman? And this comes from Drew Walters. I used to write with at Howling Hockey. He has that question and then one more, but that one also. The next question also came up with some other people. But should the team be looking for another right-handed D? They signed Glendening. to a 1-year deal to play that bottom pair right side. Do you think we need more? I don't think so at all. I think we're fine. I think if anything, Wood should get a shot at camp.
The short answer is yes, and the long answer is yes. Okay, I think the Coyotes need to be looking for a good, stable right D, and I don't think that's Clendenning. Clendenning is a seventh defenseman to me. I don't think he'll ever be a staple on the bottom pair or in the bottom four. I've seen him play before. I know he hasn't gotten all the games he deserves, but I don't think he's that kind of position. I think if Kyle Wood has a good showing at camp, then no, I don't think we need to go out and look for him, which I guess would then be the long answer. But short answer, I think we should be shopping for a serviceable bottom four right-handed defenseman. That's why I kind of wanted them to go after Carl Alsner, but we didn't have the money for him because he was going to get overpaid by someone stupid like Montreal.
Who is out there that you want? Clendenning was the best free agent right-handed lower pair defenseman out there.
Oh, I'm sure there's right-handed defensemen out there on the trade market. I can't think of any off the top of my head.
You're going to have to bring me a short list next week of right-handed defensemen that you think would be better than Clendenning that we could get through trade reasonably. Because I don't think that exists.
Do you think the Coyotes need to go shopping?
No.
Thank you.
Well, you guys are lame.
Who are the assistant captains? And this was being tossed around on Twitter this morning by a lot of people, and I kind of took it as a mailbag. Someone asked it. Drew asked me the other day, but I think in general, like, who gets A's?
Well, we know Ekman Larsson's
Larsson's
going to
be captain. We don't have to argue
That's
that.
a Gorgon conclusion.
So who gets the A's? 'Cause someone said Martinook, and I'm like, oh,
What?
hell no.
No, that's not.
There are other guys way ahead of him on the list. Richardson's higher on the list, and Richardson's more useless.
Is this who do we actually
Who's going to be the
think,
A's? Who's going
or
to be the
who
A's?
do I want?
No, who realistically?
Well, I'm going to do both. I want Max Domi to be an alternate captain with someone like probably Hjalmarsson. Who do I think will actually be the alternate captains? Probably Hjalmarsson. And probably Richardson or Goligoski. I really hope it's not Goligoski.
Nick Cousins and Clendenning. Just kidding. That's like the opposites. I agree with Sam. Nicholas Hjalmarsson's going to be an assistant captain. He's been an assistant captain in Chicago at points before, I believe. Like during injuries, he's an assistant. So
Yeah.
he used to be.
But he's a good veteran.
He was a voice in the room. He has playoff and Stanley Cup pedigree. Nicholas Hjalmarsson should get an A. And I think the other, Verbata's gone. I don't think I would give it to Domi just yet. I wrote a ways back that maybe Domi should get a look for it, but I think the circumstances of the organization have changed.
I think that the way the circumstances has changed has opened the door to make it even more plausible for Domi to be the captain because Tocchet likes him so much.
I think
and it gives an opportunity for Domi to grow in a leadership capacity.
Goligoski got an A during points of last season during injury, but you can't give all of your captaincies to defensive players. I haven't seen that in a very long time, and I think you have to have someone leading.
We're not
forwards.
the New Jersey Devils, man.
We don't play trap. So I think Hjalmarsson takes an A away from Goligoski, essentially, and I think the other A goes to Brad Richardson. Brad Richardson's been in the locker room before. He's worn the A before. I don't see a point where he doesn't get the A, at least at some point during the season, if he doesn't get moved. And if he does get moved, then Stepan. Even though he's new.
Oh crap! I forgot about
Stepan's
Stepan.
worn an A before. I think Stepan
he
can
had
do
an
it.
A in New York.
Yeah, so I think it's Stepan or Brad Richardson for the forwards, and obviously Hjalmarsson and Ekman Larsson.
Who do you think?
I hardly know anything about the Coyotes.
Oh.
That's
But I mean, I'm sure you guys know exactly what you're talking about.
Thank you for the compliment. The final someone thinks we're rational. The final question comes from my buddy Paul, who says you can go fuck yourself for your Preds comments last week.
What?
He sent
Paul,
me.
don't be like that.
He sent me a text this morning, and I told him we were recording. He's like, "You need to read this Reddit roast of the Penguins and a Reddit roast of the Coyotes out loud on the podcast." I'm
How
like,
dare he?
fuck no, I'm not, because I don't want to make myself feel bad.
Paul, come on, don't be like that.
So Paul says, where do the Preds finish, assuming they get Johansson back?
First.
You watch the Central, so you're familiar with the Preds at least,
Mhm.
somewhat. where do you think the Central ends up? Like where the Preds and maybe the Blues? What's the playoff seeding for you? Who wins? Who gets second, third, and is there a wild card from the division?
I think it might end up being similar to last year.
Okay.
With except Preds definitely be closer to the top. I think, instead of Chicago, Chicago deserves to never go to the playoffs again.
Thank you.
But
well, my hot take last week was that the Blackhawks would miss the playoffs, so
Which
I still stand by that.
I could believe
Okay.
that if they're going to make the playoffs, it's going to be in a wild card.
If they
yeah,
make it,
I think Blackhawks are definitely going to be lower seeded. The Preds, I think, are
Gonna win the division.
could be on top. I'm not so sure about the Wild.
I think they're on the downturn.
Yeah, I don't really know where they're at. Blues, I think, could be right behind the Preds, or maybe next to them.
So like a second or a third seed for the Blues, first or a second seed in
For
the Central
Preds,
for the Preds.
yeah.
Dallas mixed in there somewhere.
The way I see
Yeah.
it, I see Preds at first, Blues second. I think Dallas is going to take the third, and then I think Blackhawks are going to be fighting with the Jets for that fourth, for that wild card, or maybe they'll get both.
I think we've discussed this before. Yeah, I think it goes Preds, Blues, and I think
the Stars have made good enough improvements to get
the,
back into the
I think
picture.
the Stars are a ways back, but the third seed in the Central. I think the Preds beat the Blues by about 4 to 5 points. They're close, but I think the Preds have enough pieces on the back end.
And a little more firepower depth wise.
Yeah, I see the Preds at right around 98 to 99 points, and I see the Blues around 94 to 95.
I can see the Preds in the hundreds.
Maybe even to the
I can
hundreds.
see
but
104.
the problem
and
with the Central-
99.
the Central eats itself alive because almost all the teams are at least somewhat good,
Yeah.
except
It's not
for
like the
Colorado.
Metropolitan.
It's not like the Metropolitan, no, but they're all decent at least. Except
We
for
can all
Colorado.
agree Colorado's
I
bottom.
think Chicago misses in the 8th
Oh, I hope
seed,
so.
and I think Winnipeg gets in as a dark horse. Just because
Yeah,
I,
I
that
can-
would be cool.
I think Mason is underrated,
I can definitely see Winnipeg slipping in there.
and I think Chicago's put themselves in a position where their defense is a train wreck enough, and I think they'll just
They don't
slide
have any
far
depth
enough back.
anymore.
No, they don't have any depth.
Oh, we brought
They got
Patrick Sharp back. Oh,
Lauren
we're gonna-
Dauphin.
Oh,
They got
Patrick
Dauphin.
Sharp, Brandon Saad. Oh no, you guys are
We're getting the
immediate
2013
contenders
team
again.
back together, and we're gonna lose in the regular season this time. Yeah, so I think the Preds are the number one team in the Central. I don't know if they're the number one team in the West. They could be. Depends on if they break that 100-point barrier. I think if the Preds break 105, they win the West.
Watch Edmonton to win the West.
And Edmonton is the only team I think can really
They are
truly
good.
take them down. And I mean it's like
Well-
the trendy pick to always pick the two best teams to be.
I'm
in the
sorry,
Western Conference.
Edmonton's not good. Connor McDavid's good.
Right.
Connor McDavid is the team.
Edmonton
And Leon
has
Draisaitl.
Edmonton has
They have Leon Draisaitl.
they have a lot of
Chris
good.
Russell
Oh no.
and Andre Sekera.
Oh no.
That's a Stanley Cup player right there, Andre Sekera.
When Connor McDavid is part of 48 something, some crazy amount of
Like
percentage.
nearly half of the percent of your
Nearly-
points.
Yeah, percentage of your points. He is your team. Okay, that was Crosby in his first year with the Penguins. They were bad, and they were only mildly good because of Crosby.
But in summation, we think the Blues and the Preds are the two top teams in the Central now.
Yes.
The hierarchy has shifted. The Blackhawks are on the way out.
Yep.
I love it.
I also
Patrick
love
Kane and Jonathan Taze can go fuck right off.
All right. So close it out, Sam. What is the one thing you learned from today? And I will give my one flaming hot take for the day.
I learned that apparently Houston is a serviceable spot for an NHL team. I don't know how much I believe it, but I've heard it.
Oh, and my flaming hot take for the day is that there will be one more big, star trade, and my gut tells me it's going to be the Kings, because the Kings are going to at some point realize that they can't rely on the few good players they have left to get them back to the playoffs, and they're going to go rent out their future basically to get a star, not necessarily a star, but a good player off the market. I don't really have a feeling who it is, but my hot take is that the Kings are getting desperate because they want to remain
Good.
at top of the division, and they're going to do something completely irrational. But that might not be as hot as I think it is.
Do they have a coach yet?
Yeah, I don't know his name.
He's no
So,
Rick Tocchet.
That's my take, but it's not really a strong take. It's more of a gut feeling.
Jacoby, was there anything you learned today?
Well, I learned that the Blues are the greatest team of all time.
That's quite the lesson.
No, that's
No.
a flaming hot take.
It is a hot take.
No. What did I learn?
Probably learned a lot about the Coyotes.
Yeah, I did, because I don't really follow them that much.
I do.
That's okay.
But definitely learned a lot more about how picking a spot for an arena works. You definitely know your stuff, Alex.
Yeah, he's some stupid nerd like that.
Yeah, I spend way too much time thinking about these stupid topics that nobody needs to care about unless you work for a municipality, because I'm dumb like that.
Yep. So we'll be back next week. I don't know if we're gonna be putting it on SoundCloud. SoundCloud's been having issues. They just laid off a bunch of people.
I heard SoundCloud's gonna die in the next month.
Yeah, so we might start putting it on iTunes or YouTube or something.
Or both.
Or both.
Or
Why
both.
not? It's not like it costs money.
Should put it on YouTube.
Yeah.
Have a nice little picture there for people to look at while they listen.
We could put fidget spinners over faces.